no heart. Ruben will be the chair. Okay?
Sounds
I don't
perfect.
even know if this is legal. Ruben. It's tails.
There it is there.
I will nominate myself for vice chair, if I'm allowed to do that.
I second that for vice chair. Do we have any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, sounds good. It looks like we have a chair, myself, Ruben Rodriguez, and vice chair, Alyssa Cooley, moving forward. Thank you so much for your nomination. All right, so we have a lot of important work to do. I don't want to waste too much time. We have a very important guest on this meeting who's taking some time out of her day. Moving over to item number 7, legislative update for discussion. This task force that has been established was introduced by Assemblywoman Selena Torres. She's a remarkable leader in our community, and I think the work that will come out of this task force will not only be beneficial to us because it's rewarding to learn the information and to be able to do the civic work that we all love to do, but this will actually affect some of our most vulnerable communities that need the support more than anybody. So I'd like to pass the floor over to Assemblywoman Selena Torres.
Hi, thank you. It's so great to be with you here today. Thank you for having the virtual option to make the meeting super convenient. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Assemblywoman Selena Torres, and I represent Assembly District here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I want to talk a little bit about the history that helped kind of advance Keep Nevada Working Task Force and why that came to be. It is not unique to Nevada that there are task forces that address specifically the needs of the immigrant community, and recognizing that the economic needs of the immigrant community is what drives like financial stability, but then also just comfort within your quality of life. And so that's kind of why the Keep Nevada Working Task Force came to be. Additionally, when we started putting together the legislation that drafted this task force, one of the constant things that we heard in the legislative building was that that we should have a conversation about this outside of legislative session to determine the needs of the immigrant community, and that it wasn't necessary for us to move or advance certain policies affected the quality of immigrants because they had not yet had that conversation as a public body until the legislative session. And so there was no reports, there was no task force, there was no interim conversation, there was no study. And so several of the pieces of legislation that had been introduced prior to 2021 were pushed back on because there needed to be some type of advanced research and innovation or study that was done in order to demonstrate that this was something that could be beneficial to the immigrant community. As a result of policies that we had introduced a couple different times that had to do with the quality of life of immigrant community, we created this space, this task force, so that we could advance policies specifically target the empowerment of the immigrant community, recognizing that empowerment comes through education, that empowerment comes through economy, and those two work hand in hand. That's why we established the Nevada Working Task Force policy in the 2021 session. It was, unfortunately, with the task force being so new, I have not seen the task force maybe come into like what its fullest impact could be. And so really the goal is for this task force to be recommending policies and eventually legislation that can improve this quality of life. At the report, some of the things include like language access, which, I know that we championed a couple different initiatives, and, with getting closer to the session, I think that the task can make recommendations that help influence and I requirement that, the outputs of this task force are shared the legislature, and that's to ensure that there is like that there can be the potential impact on policy. And I'm happy to take any questions or provide any clarification if necessary. But it's great to see so many familiar faces on this call, recognizing too that the face of an immigrant is different in every part of our community. It's important that we have an inclusive space that addresses the various needs of our community. I think that, UNLV Community Advocacy Office plays a part of that. I think that our diverse chambers of commerce play a part of that. And I think that, the activists within our community play a part of that. And our education is a part of that. And there's that can be done that overall will positively impact New Nevada, because that's who we're talking about policy for, and they are Nevadans, they're contributing members of our community, and there's definitely to their success and achievement, and it's important for us to find ways to support them.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. I'd like to open the floor for questions for Assemblywoman Torres. Ruben Rodriguez for the record. I have a question for you, Assemblywoman. Some of those conversations that you said you were having at the legislature, can you expand on some of those conversations and give us some direction on where you think this group of individuals before you, we have some great community leaders, should take the first step moving forward? Is there anybody we should have speak to the task force? Is there anybody that should come before us and provide research in terms of the immigrant community? What guidance would you give us in terms of setting the first course of actions?
Yeah, one of the big issues that we have in our community, finding different ways to target this for many years now, is just like the comfort of immigrants to report to law enforcement. And to feel safe working with local law enforcement. And I want to reiterate how important I think local enforcement is to our community, because they play a vital role in keeping our community safe. Today, this morning I went into work. It was a professional development day for my school. And we actually had a break-in last night, and so we called local law enforcement to come report to the scene, and to just support in the investigation. And it was great. One of my sorority sisters was actually the first officer to respond. I know she worked in that command. I was excited to see her. But I think it's important to iterate like how important it is that we have a working relationship with law enforcement. In another role, I play a board member for SafeNest, which is our local domestic violence shelter. And the reality is, and this is common knowledge, it's not as is that many times in our immigrant community, we don't report to local law enforcement for fear of type of consequence, like whether it be deportation or that, we won't have access to the services we won't have access to an officer that speaks our language, and many things like that. So I think there's a lot of work that can be done in that space specifically, to make sure that we're encouraging our communities to report crimes, and very specifically violent crimes, to local law enforcement, so we feel like we have that access. And it's something that we see all too often, specifically in the immigrant community, and even more for immigrant women. And you see that with the Asian American community, you see that with the Latino community. It's very common that you see generally women staying in abusive relationships, or you see people that are victims of armed assaults that don't report the crime because concerned that that will be their immigration status might be shared. And I think that's one area. Another area is in education. I think that there's a lot of work we can do, and in the past years, I know that we worked on multiple pieces of legislation to ensure that there's access to certain state scholarships, including our SSOG, our Millennium Scholarship, and others. But I think there's more work that can be done in that space to ensure that our immigrants, students, have access to education. I guarantee that there's more that we can do on access to state business licensing and other parts of that process. For many immigrants, there is obviously a language barrier, but then there's also so many different offices that somebody has to go to in order to get that business license. I know that some of that work has been addressed by the Office of Small Business Advocacy under the Lieutenant Governor's office, but I think that there's more work. That's also a very small office. I think it has 1 or 2 employees. I think that there's more work that we can do in that space as well, to help empower and support our immigrants in those spaces. I know that the Office of New Americans sometimes plays that role in connecting people, but I think that there's more that we can do for that economic empowerment. And lastly, language access overall in state and government systems. And I know that's an issue that I've worked on independently as well in different ways. And I think that there could be more ways that our local governments and communities are supporting in language access, especially the languages that are required by the ballot. And I expect soon, right here in Southern Nevada specifically, that's English, Spanish, and Tagalog, but I expect that soon to include Mandarin as well. And so, making sure that our government have access to those to the services and providing the translation, supporting our community colleges and higher education in the development of like translation programs. Right now, there is a deficit in that we have court translators, but there's not like a certificate program that we're using here that our local colleges and universities have that support like translators for other types of translation. And we know, government translation is different than court translation, and the needs of the community are different, right? Like we oftentimes in education we need a translator, but we need them to speak in a way that our parents can understand, right? And so those are different types of things, and that has been a barrier for local governments as well. A certified translator is a very different type of translator than what you need to help translate a document for an event. So just making sure that there's those programs, I think would be a unique way for this task force to help support our immigrant community.
Thank you so much. Do we have any other questions?
Iris Jones with Governor's Office for New Americans for the records. I would like to share, based on what Assemblywoman Torres is just talked about. It is true, especially when it comes to women, then are put in situations, then they feel, I guess, not only safe, but also then they are afraid of talking to the law enforcement. I myself went through that situation. Is definitely something that is very close to my heart, of course, and because of that, ONA has a partnership right now with Metro, and because just like Metro is trying to break those barriers when it comes to talking to the immigrant community and letting them know that, hey, you can come to us, it is safe, we have nothing, we're here to protect you, it has nothing to do with your document. ONA have the same barrier. I mean, not necessarily ONA, but I'm talking about the government, right? People, we have found out that people are kind of afraid sometimes to talk to us as well. And because of that, we have a partnership with them, and we are out there in the community letting them know, you can come safely to us, and we are here to help you. So as Assemblywoman Torres was speaking, I was just thinking that we can probably bring the law enforcement to one of our meetings, saying they can better share what is happening on that regard. Also, although this is not for language access, but I would like to report that a couple years ago, when everything started with language access, 69 agencies were working, between agencies and boards were working. As of now, we have 97 agencies then have already submitted their language access, so we're making a great progress on that. It's a great, I believe then it will bring great results for the immigrant communities, and we do have all the citizen counties language access plans are ready. We're also now ONA is providing English classes for the immigrant community as well, and I'm just here thinking that I think it will be beneficial for us to all come together and share what is happening in our office. When we talked about licensing, and we talked a little bit about what we're doing with the immigrant community when it comes to workforce opportunities, we are working with welfare as well with CSN, and we are currently developing a program they will focus on vocational English classes. And this was a product of a meeting that we have with multiple builders, between builders associations, and it was on the building field. And we identified that there are 50,000 vacancies that needs to be filled. At the same time, because ONA meets monthly with the refugee resettlement agencies, we also identified that the biggest challenge they have is, of course, to find jobs for the refugee community. So back in April, we put everybody together in a room, and based on the results of that meeting, we are now developing these classes. So I will make sure that I share this information about this task force with the partners, and we are already working on this, and I would like to bring them so then we can all push forward on this project.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
Not Alyssa Cooley-Yonezawa for the record. Not a question, but Assemblywoman Torres, I'd be happy to talk with you, since that's one of my new responsibilities as vice chair, and to support the chair in how we can make this task force what you and your colleagues envisioned it to be when the bill passed. Thank you.
Torres for the record. Thank you. I look forward to that.
Hi, Jenny Kim for the record. I appreciate all the efforts that the State Assemblywoman Torres and her team is making. And with this task force, it's so important for not just immigrants, but everybody who's at disadvantage for his workforce and small business development. I think we do have in Nevada a lot of resources and supports, collaboration between agencies. I think the biggest challenge, I think, is the awareness and the language barrier. And it's a big project, right? It's there's over 189 different languages in the translation services, even with AT&T and different translation services that's available for the courts, medical field, and everything else. But it's how do we share that information to say, hey, if you need help with domestic violence, if you need help with getting your licenses to transfer from your other respective countries, how do we get that information shared? Because most of the time, the immigrant business owners and professionals that I speak with, they don't know where to start. It's the starting point of, we're in a new country, we are professionals by our trade and everything else, but a lot of times the licenses do not transfer over because Nevada is one of the harder states to pass specific professional licenses. So I have a lot of doctors from other countries that's working as nurse practitioners or midwives because they can't transfer their licenses. So it's more of, I think, getting awareness of where to start for somebody, then to create more resources. I think more collaboration between agencies would be something that we really need to focus on to get those resources out. And my job has always been for advocating and cultural awareness between all the different diverse communities that we do have here. And it's, I don't know if this is possible, but we do need like a hub where we could be, come to us for whatever you need, and we'll find the agency or resources that will serve you or that can provide you with the resources that you need to move forward to have that the American dream that everybody comes here for.
Thank you so much. One last call for questions for Assemblywoman.
Again, Alyssa Cooley-Yonezawa for the record. It's not question, more just commenting about Ms. Kim's idea of a hub. I don't know what the status is of this, but many of y'all may have heard of North Las Vegas's Dolores Huerta Resource Center. And I know in the beginning of the year, they were planning on having like rough draft launch or something, like not complete, and have an event. And the idea behind the resource center is to have like it be a hub. And they'd have many different departments, one legal, not necessarily immigration, but all things legal, like with family law and contract law and wills and trusts and stuff like that. An educational department, all kinds, and to have different community groups and folks like work together. So it'd be kind of like a one-stop shop is how they were envisioning it. I wasn't able to go to the last like brainstorming session that I think I was out of town earlier this year, but I can touch base and see where they're at, and then maybe the task force can invite them to come in one of our meetings to speak about where they're at in that project.
That would be great.
Ruben Rodriguez, for the record, those are great recommendations. I just wanted to thank Assemblywoman Torres for the informative update, giving us unbelievable guidance on direction to move forward. I'm going to go ahead, since the conversation has kind of moved towards Section 8 of the agenda items. I wanted to open up the discussion for task force members to come up with recommendations for agenda items for the next meeting. As the Assemblywoman said, we would love to get a report to the legislator by December, or if not sooner, so we would like to meet monthly. So any guidelines, any recommendations for the next meeting of how we can move forward? I know Alyssa Cooley just mentioned maybe having the folks from the city of North Las Vegas for Dolores Huerta project maybe come before the committee. So I'm going to open up the conversation now for task force members to come up with agenda items for the next meeting.
Jenny Kim, for the record, I would recommend that we would have a list of tasks within the task force to what services we are going to be focusing on for the December recommendation. We can't handle everything, but I think the top 3 or 5 that we can say, hey, this is our target for December recommendation. This is our action plan. This is the deliverables that we're looking for, and how to go about it, and what collaborations that we do need to get those achieved. Thank you.
Alyssa Cooley Onazawa, for the record. I do think if the task force wants to have a report to the legislature by December, and with the 2025 session starting February, right? Maybe in theme with Assemblywoman Torres's suggestion, we could have some suggestions for the legislature, recommendations in that final report. I also think when the task force was still under the lieutenant governor's office, we were working with Leslie Nino Piro from the AG's office about the recommended model policies for law enforcement, and the disclosure of status information, whether somebody had immigration status, in the police department, in hospitals, schools, and stuff like that. I know Mike Kagan, my boss and the director of the UNLV Immigration Clinic, he has had conversations with Ms. Piro about it. Maybe we should have in one of maybe the next meeting, we can invite her or her office to come and present on where they're at. At the last task force meeting we had with them present, I believe they took our recommendations and red lines from the report, and they were going to do excuse me, something like a circuit ride to the different law enforcement agencies across the state to get their feedback. And so I think that's the stage where they might be at right now, and there's not great feedback, I believe, which is not necessarily surprising, from law enforcement. And so I think it would be helpful to invite them back, and maybe we can have those model policies by the end of the year or the beginning of next year.
This is Erica Castro, for the record. I wanted to talk a little bit about it's in the report that's going to be submitted. I know around raising more awareness for immigrants, especially for high school students. I was actually just working with UNLV and currently working with NSC on just some stuff with undocumented students who are graduating from high school and getting settled into their education, into their higher ed education. And one of the things that came up there is just the lack of resources or awareness that they have on like what they are eligible for and whatnot. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can work with the governor's Office of Economic Development to make sure that we can talk a little bit more about what are opportunities that some of these students have, especially as Assemblywoman Torres mentioned. There was a bill that opened up occupational licenses, business licenses for folks. So figuring out how we can, as a task force, create materials, implement a process for folks to have that information more readily available. And I think that's a collaboration that we can work with the NSHE, Nevada Systems of Higher Education. They have different committees and whatnot that are specifically focused on workforce development and opportunities for undocumented and immigrant students. So I think that they would be a great resource, maybe someone that can come to the table and share with us a little bit more about some of the challenges and what they would like us to do as a task force.
Ruben Rodriguez, I'd like to add to what you were just mentioning, Erica. I know Michael Flores, who was on this task force previously, does some really amazing work at UNR for immigrant communities, first-generation students. He may be a good person to bring to the committee to kind of talk about what UNR has done to identify some of the gaps and some of the resources available to first-generation students, if the task force would agree to that.
Not sure if I'm supposed to say for the record, I agree. But for the record, Erika Castro, I agree.
Alyssa Kuliyonazawa, I agree too.
Ruben Rodriguez, for the record, thank you so much. I'd like to open up the conversation more to task force members to kind of talk through some more agenda items for next week. So we'll kind of continue on that conversation for a little bit, if that's okay with everybody. And for background, Jasmine Coca, task force member, just came here physically in Las Vegas. She's coming around right now.
Alyssa Kuliyonazawa, for the record, she had texted me, asking me if I could tell you, and then I immediately forgot, and I apologize to Ms. Coca. Sorry about that.
No worries. If we can take agenda items out of order, I'd like to go back to the agenda item number 5, introducing task force members. So we can introduce Ms. Coca.
Hi, good afternoon. Sorry, I was on the phone, but I was on mute, so you couldn't hear me. So I drove over here to participate. Thank you for having me or appointing me to the committee. Thank you, Erica, in particular. So my name is Jasmine Coca. I'm the Director of Immigration Services for Catholic Charities of Southern Nevada. What I do is I represent individuals before the immigration agencies, Immigration Court, USCIS, ICE, and the Board of Immigration Appeals. I work with Alyssa on another committee, and then with Erica in the past, and with Iris. Nice to meet you in person. So what we do at our agency, we have an immigration services program, but we also have a refugee and migration services program. And that program, we're actually trying to work in coming up with a plan to help refugees adapt to the ways of the United States and becoming self-sufficient. There's a lot of information they don't know: how to open a bank account, how to do a lot of things. And so employment is one of those things. And the things, I heard everything you said in the meeting, and I don't oppose anything that you guys have brought up, the agenda items or any of the appointments. My point is that I agree with what you say. There are language issues that we need to consider. I know for myself, self-sufficiency is really important in what I do, and trying to get people employment authorization if they're eligible for it, and then trying to connect them to employment, whether that's through my agency or through community partners. And sometimes that's not easy, especially if they're not even literate. So that's something that we also have to think about. But I look forward to, I'm very excited about working with everyone here. And I will try to think of some agenda items. And I think you'll, if you didn't already, when I was walking up here, address how we can get those agenda items to either Alyssa or to you if I can't think of agenda items at this moment in time. So thank you.
Ruben Rodriguez for the record. Thank you so much. I will go back to agenda item number 8. Any recommendations for next steps for agenda items?
Well, this is Jasmine Coca for the record. Are we allowed to email the chair and the vice chair the agenda items if we do it in a timely manner? By when would you need those agenda items?
Ruben Rodriguez for the record. Yes, those can be emailed to myself, CC Alyssa. I will send around those emails just in case you don't have them. Ideally, as soon as possible, unless we're not asking for someone to testify before the committee, we may have some more wiggle room. I do think I'm kind of getting a general consensus that coming up with some type of where to start guide for our immigrant community, whether that's where to look for work, where to get resources for learning the language, where to get resources for starting your small business that you might have had in your previous country, how to transfer your licenses or degrees that you have from another country as well. I think those might also be some really good starting points in identifying who within the task force already does that work in this space, or where we can be guided in terms of being able to compile that information, because it is a lot of work compiling the information, but I think it's easier putting it in one place as opposed to creating it from scratch.
Well, sorry, Jasmine Coca for the record. Well, I mean, I think you touched on it earlier, if we can look to our own agencies to see what resources we have and to look to our current community partners, I think that would be really helpful. I definitely would probably ask someone from my agency to come in the future and participate in this meeting if allowed, to give some information. We have an employment services unit within our agency. We also have a client services department within Catholic Charities. We have a lot of homeless clients. We have a lot of homeless clients who are immigrants and non-immigrants. And so they may be able to also provide some information as to their challenges or their recommendations. So I will definitely talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Ruben Rodriguez for the record. Opening up again for further conversation.
Alyssa Kuliyonazawa for the record. I can reach out to the AG's office and see if they'd be willing to come to our next meeting, or they may need more time, so like October, because I know that Ruben had said we should meet monthly until we have the report. Does everyone feel okay about that? Either the September meeting that we decide on, or October meeting having someone for the AG's office come?
Yeah, I second that. Ruben Rodriguez for the record.
That sounds like a good idea. Jasmine Coca for the record.
I think Jenny Kim for the record, for all the agenda items, if we can try to find the coordinating agencies that would be a good collaborator, and we'll kind of find out what they already have. That way we're not duplicating services and to see what is already out there. I think would be a good starting point. And then how we can connect different agencies with different services and what they're missing and why when a client comes to them, they can't facilitate all their needs, or what they do with that afterwards. Do they send them somewhere else, or do they say, well, this is what I do, you need to go to another agency to find something else? Sometimes there's a lot of disconnect from one agency to another. So if there's a way to link that collaboration effort, I think that would be a good start.
Thank you. Ruben Rodriguez for the record. I'd like to move to the next item within 8th agenda item. Is coming up with a date for our next meeting. I know it's been brought up maybe the last week of September. Is there a date for task force members that just doesn't work or works better for some people? I know this may be a little difficult now, but feel free to look at your calendars if there's any dates that just do not work for your schedule.
Alyssa Cooley-Onizawa for the record. I will be out of town Friday the 27th.
Erica Castro for the record. I will be out of town Monday the 23rd.
Jasmine Coca for the record. On September 20th, I believe that's a Friday, I will be at a conference all day.
Jenny Kim for the record. I proposed Wednesday the 25th. Tuesday and Thursdays are really tough for me, but Wednesday's pretty good, and I think everybody else is here.
I'd like to second Wednesday, the 25th. Do we have anybody that's opposed to that date? Perfect. So let's get for the record that our next task force meeting will convene on Wednesday, September 25th.
This is Jasmine Coca. Just for clarification, will it be at 1 o'clock on September 25th?
Ruben Rodriguez for the record. We can discuss time as well. I'm available throughout the day. I'll make myself available. If there's any times as well within the day that works better for task force members, please let us know as well.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Jasmine Coca for the record. I would recommend 1 p.m. on that date if that's a good time. I'm available at that time, but I know everyone's schedule does not revolve around me. So, but I just checked my calendar and I'm available. But I can also be flexible. If other people have other times on that date, then I will try to accommodate the task force.
Erica Castro for the record. That time works for me, so I don't mind keeping one on the 25th.
Alyssa Cooley-Onizawa for the record. That time works for me too.
Ruben Rodriguez for the record. Perfect. Let's go ahead and note it for Wednesday, September 25th at 1 p.m. We'll reconvene. Myself and Alyssa will compile the recommendations for the next meeting, and we will try to have a tentative agenda item for folks to add on to prior to the next meeting. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and move over to agenda item number 9, public comments. Before we adjourn, I'll reopen the floor for any public comments here in Las Vegas. We currently do not have anybody here in Las Vegas, so I will open it up for broadcasting. Broadcasting, do we have anybody available that would like to give public comment?
Thank you, Chair. Your public line is open and working, but you have no callers at this time.
Thank you so much, broadcasting. I'd like to move to agenda item number 10, adjournments. We have no further business. Do I have a second?
I'll second the adjournment. Jasmine Coca.
Thank you so much, Ms. Goga. Since we have a second on that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn for the first task force meeting. I just wanted to take the time to thank all the task force members. I know each one of you have a very, very busy schedule. So I just want to take the time and remind everybody that the work that we're going to do here is really important. And I'm happy to share this journey with each and every one of you. And I look forward to the work we'll do ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Too.